Greetings, all you Sonic fans out there. I'm Duuz-Diz-Din coming at you with another review of IDW's Sonic the Hedgehog, with this time being issue number 11, which sees the finale of the showdown between Neo Metal Sonic, now Metal Overlord yet again thanks to the powers of the Master Emerald, going up against the Resistance, Sonic, and his various allies. We see Blaze slowly coming down off of being Burning Blaze, wondering if the reason that Angel Island is slowly falling out of the sky is because she blew off the wings that the Eggman Empire had attached to it. But Amy informs her that the only reason why Angel Island would be falling like that is because someone has removed the Master Emerald, namely Metal Sonic, who is unleashing a barrage onto Shadow, Knuckles, and Sonic, who are doing their best in order to avoid his onslaught. However, they end up captured, with Metal Sonic deciding he'll take the three over to the ship that has been commandeered by the Resistance in order to take them all down together and witness the destruction of Angel Island as it plummets into the sea below. However, Tails is having none of this and goes in order to help out Sonic and the others by using the ship's cannons to blast Metal Overlord. All these name changes, it gets to be a little bit much. We then cut to Rough and Tumble having captured Dr. Eggman, who believes he is the Tinkerer, a friendly mechanic, and the introduction of the newest OC, as most people will call it. Listen, just because a series introduces new characters doesn't mean they're going to overshadow other characters. It's just a way of moving along the plot sometimes, or just actually having something a little bit different in order to get things underway. With Dr. Starlin being someone who actually has a deep interest in Dr. Eggman and the way he operates, using his machine in order to hopefully bring back out the true nature of Dr. Eggman within the Tinkerer. Meanwhile, Sonic, having broken free of Metal Sonic's grasp, does what he does best and starts to taunt Neo Metal Sonic into kind of just being distracted by him in order for the rest of the Resistance to come in and do their best in order to take out Neo Metal Sonic's wings, loosening his grip on the ship and kind of causing him to descend towards the waters below, with everyone doing their best in order to just take out the wings, and Knuckles doing his best in order to get the Master Emerald out of its placement in Neo Metal Sonic. However, Metal Sonic has had enough of their antics and just throws everyone from his body, only for everyone to be saved by the intervention of Silver. And I like that they show that, so much can just completely overwhelm Silver's abilities. He's very powerful, but he's inexperienced in that power. Because if he were able to do things like this easily, taking on Neo Metal Sonic would be no problem. But there's a great strain on him when he tries to just hold everyone up and aloft in the sky. However, they end up being saved by Tails coming in with the ship, just crashing it right into Metal Sonic, completely taking him off guard. And Knuckles as well manages to just pop out the Master Emerald from its placement in Metal Sonic and slams it right into Angel Island, managing to keep the island from just descending right into the waters below. Now, this kind of feels like a false sense of tension because we've seen Angel Island plummet into the sea before, with nary a problem. But you know, it was a good way of just, you know, putting a sense of urgency there. But if you've seen previous things in the series, you know that it's just kind of like, well, Angel Island by all accounts should have been fine. But this is also talking about a series where in the mainline stories, you know, half of the moon was blown up, but few games later, you know, it's fine, it's whole, it's complete, and it's like nothing ever happened. So, physics a little bit shaky in the Sonic series as a whole. And as Sonic, you know, makes sure Tails is okay and that Metal Sonic is down for the count, everyone has these nice little moments where they're just, you know, chilling out and resting. Chaotix are just like, job well done. Tangle is still just excited and thrilled over everything that they went through. Blaze and Silver, you know, thank Whisper for helping them out. And, you know, Shadow goes skulking off into the woods just to be by himself. As noted by Rouge, never one to stick around for the after party. And Knuckles is just thankful to have his home back to the way it was, and Sonic and Tails congratulate each other on a job well done. However, unfortunately, despite the celebration going on by our heroes, we come to find out that Dr. Sterling has completed his resurrection, as it were, of Dr. Eggman, and he greets him back into the Eggman Empire. So next issue we will see what is known as the cost of the battle for Angel Island. Which, you know, should be interesting enough. This issue was alright, a decent conclusion to everything we've been building up to. I mean, it's just the start to kind of get you adjusted to this world, more or less. Just kind of get you settled in for the long haul as we go moving forward. Ian Flynn said that he was basically just doing a lot of this just to kind of get people familiar with the series, you know, get them kind of in the know about where it's headed, where it's going, how things will be set up, and just get them kind of interested in the series as a whole. Now, I know some people have been complaining about the various things leading up to this series as a whole, saying things like, oh, new characters, all this, your OCs, and blah, blah, blah. But you look at any real outside series overall, you know, even adaptations, no matter what, of another, you know, property, and there's always going to be new characters introduced. Hell, the mainline Sonic games as a whole have been introducing new characters ever since Sonic the Hedgehog #2. You know, it's always been a thing because you're trying to grow and expand the world as a whole. And you don't get that just by sticking to one or two characters. Like, with just 10 characters, that doesn't make for a story that's going to last for a good long amount of time. You're always introducing new characters who have varying, you know, amounts of relevance in the story as a whole. Just because you have a few characters introduced doesn't mean they're going to overshadow your mainline characters. You know, just more characters to play off of as a whole. But, you know, I enjoy stuff like this. I enjoy, you know, this new IDW series very much. You see a lot of the older writing style that Ian Flynn had, especially in terms of the resistance in parallel to the freedom fighters, the organizations, the grouping, the gathering. One person had asked me about talked to me about the fact that they believe that, you know, Ian had an issue with the freedom fighters, which is why they, you know, are no longer shown in the series, which couldn't be further from the truth. That's an issue in the fact that the freedom fighters were an old grouping of characters that were only very prevalent after the original show that they were in, Sonic the Hedgehog, back in the early 90s had ended. They were only present in the Archie comics because, that was their history. There was a history to be drawn upon there and reasons to keep them involved. And even after the reboot, it was only because of Ian that they were, stayed there as a constant and weren't just thrown by the wayside. But because we've moved over to a new property that doesn't have that kind of history or involvement, or, and not to mention Sega wants this series more in a more focused, streamlined in terms of the games, there was no real credible reason to bring the Freedom Fighters in. Now, maybe down the line that might change. The series is very young, hasn't even been going on for a year, but that is very much not what Sega wants, because the Archie comics very much got out of hand. And thanks to Ken Penders as a whole, that kind of ruined some of the relationship between how Sega treats these series. They want to keep a close rein on it because Ken Penders got out of control. His original request just to have royalties for the, comics that he himself wrote wasn't like something that they were, being unreasonable about. But it was the fact that he wants payment to use his characters. Yeah, Archie was having none of that, and neither was Sega, which is why you had that mini reboot towards the, towards the end, later on series of the Archie comics, because that, no series is going to pay just to have, a few characters in there in a series that is only like a small part of a greater whole. The Sonic series does not rely on the Archie comics, or didn't rely on the Archie comics to bring home the bacon, you know what I mean? And so once they saw that it was causing any form of trouble, they nixed it because they weren't having any of it. And this is all stuff that you can, hear from Ian Flynn himself and various other sources who have worked for Archie Comics and Ken Penders himself. If you go to the Bumble King, Ian's right here on YouTube, Bumble King, and just hear his monologues and thoughts. You can go to Twitter and hear from various writers about just the weird things that Ken Penders thought he was owed or thought should be. If they want to use my characters, they could just come to me and ask. It's just like this pompous attitude that he has about things. And it's just like, yeah, no self-respecting company would ever do what he's asking for. So lots of things just broken down over that. Sega is keeping a close eye on how this is maintained, keeping a closer relationship with this, because Ian Flynn had to pitch this series to not only IDW, but he works a lot closer with Sega now more than ever with the Archie comics. Because for the longest time, the Archie comics could do whatever they want and they were fine. It was just this thing off to the side with Sonic's name on it. But more and more, Sega was having more direct involvement with things. And, now more than ever, Sega has a bigger hand in how things are handled. And, Whisper, the wolf herself, a lot of things about her character came directly from Sega. Ian Flynn even talked about this in a recent, Bumblecast, his one of his shows things, where he talked about the fact that Sega themselves had introduced a lot of elements about Whisper's character. Not to mention, Tangle and how she was received, how even the Sega themselves actually promoted the character, handed out t-shirts, stuff like that. So Sega is acting a little bit more in line with them because they have more of a direct interaction and relationship with IDW, better than they did with Archie Comics. And they will never, we will never see anything that has even Ken Penders' breath upon it in terms of this series because he just ruined so many relationships with the way he acted towards Archie Comics and Sega as a whole. So, if we see the Freedom Fighters further down the line, maybe it'll happen, but that'll only happen because Ian Flynn asked for it. And you, the fans, asked for it as well. But, don't get too frantic about wanting to see a lot of the older Archie stuff return because that's a bygone era. That is no longer where Sega wants this series taken, and Ian Flynn has no real say in this. He works for IDW and he works for Sega, so he can only take things as far as they allow him to. So when you see these newer characters introduced, it's only by the grace of Sega that they are actually allowed to be here and act the way they are, because Sega allows it. And it's with these newer characters and newer elements introduced that Ian is able to go in and just tell various stories, have certain characters interact, or tell more about the world at large, because we know nothing really about this world. We know it's populated by anthropomorphic animals, and a lot of elements within it are inspired by the games. But there's a lot more to go off, see, understand, do, experience. We've only touched a small corner of this world as a whole, and Ian's gonna be playing it pretty close to the vest this time around because he doesn't want to rock the boat. So just bear with this series if you're willing to. But I understand if some people are just longing for the good old days, not quite happy with OCs, as it were, introduced into this series, who they feel, it's just like, why did they get to be here but not the Freedom Fighters or what have you? There are very deeper, specific reasonings behind that, and I just felt like I needed to make that known. And I have to apologize, I got off on a really big tangent, but this is something that came up a lot, very much a lot after my last review, so I just thought I'd kind of make that known to you, the viewers out there at large. But thank you so much for joining me. Tell me your thoughts on this issue in the comment section below. If there's any points I brought up that you want to discuss, we can discuss them in the comments. If you tell me how you felt about this finale, what do you think about Dr. Sterling and the Rough and Tumble being kind of the allies to Eggman in terms of this series? I like Dr. Sterling because he very much reminds me of Dr. Finitivus from the Archie comics. So, we might see certain characters reinvented in a way in order to, just get that concept and that idea back in there. But, do you like this character? Are you interested to see where he goes or how he impacts Dr. Eggman as a whole? What will he end up bringing to the table and the Eggman Empire? Not to mention, it's just like, what will become of Metal Sonic? Will this be the last we ever see of him trying to rule? Will Neo Metal Sonic make a return later down the line? I like that they tried to explain away the reason why he wasn't involved in Sonic Forces. Just he was getting upgraded for the final battle and all that good stuff. They're trying to keep it kind of interwoven with the games, which I think is a good way to go. Just keep a closer relationship in terms of stuff like that. But if you liked what I had to say here, feel free to leave me a like. If you didn't like what I had to say here and didn't much care for that whole tangent I went on, feel free to leave me a dislike. I'll understand. I really will. It's just like, I was getting a little bit heated by a few things I had been hearing previously. I'm just like, I want to at least set the record straight because you can actually, talk talk to Ian about these things and actually hear it from the horse's mouth just by just going online and just searching around a little bit more. It seems to be this disconnect between what is truth and what is just made up by other people out there online. It was very odd, but you know, feel free to leave me a dislike if you didn't like what I did here or had to say here. But hey, how about subscribing for more Sonic the Hedgehog by IDW issue reviews? It's always a pleasure to have you, and thanks for joining me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.